you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise today to commend this bill to the House. Our government is not afraid to take strong action on domestic violence and to keep Territorians safe, unlike those opposite when they were in power, who continually watered down the law for 8 long years, putting the rights of offenders above the rights of victims. When they removed mandatory sentencing for domestic violence breaches, I think it was in 2019, which had untold consequences of letting domestic violence offenders walk the streets free while their victims lived in fear. Madam Speaker, I just want to do a bit of a history lesson and talk about some of the victims who suffered under the regime of the previous Labor government. And I would like to start with Kuman Rubunta, who was a woman in Alice Springs who died at the hands, I think you're very aware of this case, Madam Speaker, being your area, so forgive me if I may get some facts wrong, which you would probably know it better than I. But this Kuman Rubunta, I think, went down to Canberra with now Senator Jacinta Price, to take the case of domestic violence to Canberra for the federal politicians to hear. She was a proud and fierce defender of women's rights against domestic violence, which is why it was all the more horrific when we learnt that she was terribly killed at the front of the Alice Springs Hospital at the hands of someone who was meant to be her husband, who was meant to love her and care for her, and instead I believe the facts were that he ran her over. That was absolutely, absolutely terrible. And it's just indicative of the sort of things that happened under the previous Labor government when domestic violence rates rose 82% over those 8 years. But, Madam Speaker, this government will not stand by and let women suffer. Now, I do know domestic violence is a very complicated space, but there's only one way to eat an elephant, and that's one bite at a time. So you have to take one piece and strengthen that, and then the next and the next and the next, until the women of the Northern Territory are safe. I just want to speak briefly to the substantive matter of this legislation. There was a High Court case a few years ago where NT Police were doing their job, exactly what we want them to do. They were being proactive, something that unfortunately the last few years under the previous Labor government they weren't able to do because of the mismanagement of that Labor government, and the various police ministers and chief ministers left them without strong leadership. The NT Police did not feel that they were supported by the government of the day under the previous Labor government, which the NTPAA surveys found repeatedly, Madam Speaker. But in 2019, police in Katherine were doing their job, proactively checking up on domestic violence orders, and they went to an address where they knew a couple to be, and there was a domestic violence order in place there, and they went in and they found that a person was in breach, and so they breached him. Now that was appealed in the local court, and it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court took an opinion that the police did not have power to enter that residence. Now, I think you can appreciate just how chilling an effect that can have. That our police are doing what we want them to do. They're being proactive, not reactive, not just answering calls and going to jobs as people ring up. They were being proactive. They were going through, using their operational methods, and they were checking up on high-risk DVOs to make sure that those women were safe, and the men in those orders were not breaching them. And the Supreme Court pull the rug out from under them. Now, Madam Speaker, thankfully that case went to the High Court, and the High Court brought some sense to the matter and corrected the decision of the NT Supreme Court. But, Madam Speaker, it is now 2025. That case was in, I believe it was 2020. That was 5 long years ago. 5 long years when the previous Labor government, well, I'll be generous, let's give him 4. 4 years when that previous Labor government could have taken action to remove any ambiguity, to give our police confidence, to say, we have your back. You can be proactive. You can do your job. You can go into the community and check up on these domestic violence orders. You can do your job. We trust you. We train you. We recruit you. We have robust procedures in place to manage your behaviour on the job. We trust you to do the right thing and keep Territorians safe. Madam Speaker, the previous Labor government, of which the opposition leader was a minister for the entire time, had that opportunity, an entire term of government, when they could have strengthened the law, when they could have kept Territorian women safe, when they could have backed in our police so that there was no ambiguity. Unfortunately, it's taken this CLP government to come in and have to clean up the mess left to us by the previous Labor government and back in our police, give them the confidence. Now, my understanding is that there being a High Court decision in this matter, that, you know, I don't think there'll be any further appeals, but for the avoidance of all doubt, we need our hard-working police officers of the NT Police to be 110% confident that when they are going to make sure that women are safe, that they can enter a property lawfully, according to their general orders and the legislation, and they won't be raked over the coals and hauled before the Supreme Court and hauled down to Canberra to face the High Court for doing the right thing, for doing what we expect them to do, which is to ensure that the defendant of a domestic violence order is complying with that order. If it says you're not allowed to be around your partner, that they're not around their partner. If it says you're not allowed to drink while you're in their company, that they're not drunk. These are very simple things. And we are 100% back in our hard-working Northern Territory Police, and we will continue to give them the tools that they need to do their job to keep Territorians safe, to keep women safe, to keep our Indigenous people safe. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I commend this bill to the House.